God, look at that title. No, I mean it. God, look at that title. Is that to set up? Answer me! Okay, so let's talk about faith for a bit. Faith is a difficult subject to discuss because it means different things to different people, and no matter what you say or do when discussing this subject, you're bound to offend someone in some way. It's inevitable. So I'm going to try my best to tread softly here. Well, that worked. To most of you, faith probably means to have complete trust or confidence in someone or something. It can mean to have a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on a spiritual conviction rather than actual proof. In a biblical sense, Christians believe that faith is actually a substance and that everyone has it, but everyone has different amounts of it. According to Hebrews 11 verse 1, and I'm using the King James Version here, faith is the substance of things hoped for, or is the evidence of things unseen. In other religions like Buddhism, faith is commitment, trust, and the pursuit of enlightenment. I wanted to make sure that we got the literal definition of the word and the religious definition because the religious meaning of the word and the secular meaning of it don't always match up, and as someone who practices the Christian faith, I need to remember that. So with that out of the way, I was asked to review this episode of The Amazing World of Gumball as a Patreon reward. And oh boy, was this a doozy. Whether you're religious or not, faith is an important part of life in both the secular sense and the religious sense. It means different things to different people, and is a very interesting topic to research. But it's also a very heavy subject, so I'll try to keep things simple so I don't lose any of you at any point. Stick with me here, it will be worth it. In this episode of The Amazing World of Gumball called The Faith, Alan has lost his faith in the world. He stopped doing all the volunteer work he did around town, resulting in the entire neighbourhood turning black and white, and starts to fall apart without him. Before I get to the actual episode proper, I wanted to point out the animation on Alan himself. Alan is a sentient balloon and is animated in CG, whereas Gumball and Darwin are 2D. As I've said in previous Gumball videos, the mixture of animation styles really shouldn't work, but somehow it does. With a character like Alan, who is basically a balloon on a string, he is literally half deflated and all he has to gesture with is the string. It's so simple and minimal, but still conveys the emotion of what he's going through. It's really impressive. Animated movies and TV shows touch on a lot of subjects that are often difficult to digest, but because of the advantages this art form has over live action, it's able to communicate and convey ideas in many different ways that anyone of any age can understand, or will understand eventually after watching an episode like this. As we grow older and mature, we see the more subtle nuances we may not have recognised as children, and as a result, there are many ways to interpret these ideas. I've always said that there is no such thing as a wrong interpretation, but all interpretations can come under scrutiny, and depending on how firmly grounded the interpretation is, and our ability to fight our own corners, this will determine how long-lasting interpretations and opinions will be. Animation can portray subtle emotion, can tackle political agenda, discuss mental health and other subjects in ways that live action simply cannot, or at least not anywhere near as successfully. Why? Because though live action can convey the harsh reality of life and can push reality to a point, it can't communicate visually as successfully as animation can, especially when the animated show or movie in question is aimed for both adults and children, like The Amazing World of Gumball is. For example, movies like Big Hero 6, Lion King, or Bambi touch upon death and grief. Pinocchio touches on temptation, conviction, and repentance. The Little Mermaid is about independence. Yeah, blah blah blah, I could go on. Obviously, there are other underlining themes threaded throughout these animated movies, and also in this particular episode I'm talking about in this video. They've always been there, but the themes are perhaps more in your face with today's releases than they used to be. When it comes to faith though, while avoiding deliberately religious movies, which I hope to touch on eventually, and focusing on mainstream movies instead, the only movie I can really think of that focuses on faith as a main theme is DreamWorks' The Prince of Egypt. You could argue that Disney's Hunchback was about faith, but the main theme of that movie was prejudice and exploitation, not really about faith or religion, among other things. I've already reviewed Hunchback, and we'll get to Prince of Egypt eventually, as this is a subject I'd like to cover again, but it's also a meaty subject and not an easy one to write about. Entertainment aimed for both adults and children has been used to teach morals using either slice-of-life examples, a simple story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson, or it can use more fantastical symbols representing subjects that are usually very difficult to talk about. This episode of Gumball tackles the subject of losing faith pretty head-on, but more on a personal level that doesn't feel preachy. To me, faith is and should be a very personal thing. No one should be forced to believe in something. It should be your own choice. Shows that deal with faith should have characters that are relatable and shouldn't just serve to teach a moral. The episode starts with what we all have complete and utter blind faith in, because they're always true and never biased. Live news report coverage. Yeah, I'll just leave this bucket to catch all the sarcasm drooling out of my mouth over here. Apparently, scientists have invented a new colour, except colours can't be invented, only discovered. But the colour has always conceptually been there, only the name and a formula for a pigment of that colour can be said to have been invented. If synthesized, they were invented, or if they occurred in nature, discovered. But the colours they express were always there. It's symbolic. You know what? I know I'm reading too much into this. Shut up. Just when the news report is showing the so-called new colour, the TV goes black and white, causing Richard to complain things always break when the warranty runs out, which was 20 years ago. No one believes in those things anyway. Wait. Oh, I see what you did there. Then Gumball's sister Anais walks out, having no colour on her skin, and Gumball says she looks like a pair of British buttocks. I should point out here that I love the comedy style of this show. It feels very improvised and natural. It's something that makes this show stand out to me from other animated shows when trying to write comedic scenes. Obviously, voice actors can improvise when recording their dialogue for a movie or episode, but to have the show itself still feel natural is very rare. I just wanted to point that out. But then, when Gumball and Darwin are told they're eating kitty litter instead of cereal, disgusting, they realise that the entire neighbourhood is turning black and white and decide to find the source of the problem. We get a string of cutaway gags showing how the rest of the neighbourhood is being affected by everything being grey. The first one being a joke about traffic jam, because the lights are now all grey. A policeman tries to sort the problem by telling the light grey car to move forward, but the wrong car moves, and he eventually gets trapped between the cars before being rammed by an oil tanker. Yeah, you know when I said there's no such thing as a wrong interpretation? Yeah, this clip right here proves that saying right. Also, I should point out someone dies in every episode of Gumball in an incredibly violent but comedic way. Gumball has a very Looney Tunes sense of logic when it comes to its violence and comedy, which is why it's interesting to see a show like this talk about themes like faith in such a sincere way without losing its comedic style. The next cutaway gag shows Rocky going to a mall to meet his blind date, who tells him via text they'd be the one in grey. After seeing everyone is now grey, instead of doing the smart thing and asking their blind date for more information, he instead decides to hit on multiple women, resulting in him getting beaten up. Deserved, I'd say, not only for being stupid, but also for being creepy. Here's a tip: if you're going on a blind date, make sure to get more information than just the colour of their outfit. Also, who wears grey to a blind date? The next cutaway gag is my favourite. It shows an American football match, and when both teams and fans turn grey, one of the fans shouts, "The spell is broken!" Now that all the teams are the same colour, they don't have to waste their life supporting them. Now they can pursue their real-life passion, close-up magic. When another fan declares embroidery as the greatest pastime of all, the two end up fighting over which pastime really is the best, proving that not only will people argue over the dumbest things, but also proving how predictable sport fans really are. Finally, we get back to the main plot, and Gumball and Darwin find themselves stuck in a wall of graffiti. Gumball says, "There's something we're not seeing," and walks into something invisible. Hey, it's symbolism. While trying to find the source of the problem, Gumball and Darwin encounter people suffering from the result of disasters happening as the result of the kid who used to feed the ducks or volunteer at the zoo, etc., stopping their volunteer work. All of these events are left to the imagination and treated with seriousness like they are world-ending. I love how the tone changes throughout this episode without feeling jarring. One scene shows how funny it would be if the world was black and white, while another scene shows how disastrous it is when one person stops doing volunteer work. Eventually, Gumball and Darwin come across Alan, who is sitting alone at the top of a hill staring at the ground. They ask him what's wrong, and he tells them he has lost faith in the world, resulting in him stopping doing all his volunteer work, which actually helped keep the town running. This is where I start to really nitpick here. The problem stems from the fact that when Alan loses faith in the world, not only does he start to see the entire world in monochrome, it makes everyone else also see the world in monochrome. When Alan stops doing his volunteer work, it's disastrous for the whole town. So, are Gumball and Darwin trying to restore Alan's faith in the world for Alan's sake, or for their own sake? I know this was played up for comedy, and they're trying to convey how losing faith can affect the world around you, and showing it in this way represents the turmoil Alan feels inside. How he sees the world becomes the literal world, and so there is more urgent need to fix it. I suppose this episode is saying that if faith really is the substance in things we hope for and things that are unseen, if we literally lose faith in the world, then we stop seeing it altogether, or it loses all its colour. It makes me wonder if we could actually see the world how other people see it, would we be more understanding and more sincere about taking them seriously, instead of saying things like, oh, it could be worse, or, you know, you don't know how lucky you have it, and all that other bull crap. Seeing the world in black and white can mean many different things. The idiom of not all things are black and white means that the world isn't as simple as we may think. It can be difficult to process. There is no good or bad, but one shade of grey. Our minds seem to like simple categorical ways to divide up information in the world. This is kind of interesting given how terribly complex and nuanced most things are, especially in our social lives. So why do we so strongly tend toward categorical simplicity in understanding the world? And what are costs and benefits of such reasoning in our day-to-day lives? I guess that's a topic for another video. Gumball and Darwin sing a song to try to lift Alan's spirit, because everything can be fixed with a musical segment, right? They do this by telling him he's just a kid and kids shouldn't worry about this stuff that is out of their hands. Just live in the now and let tomorrow deal with tomorrow. This is frankly terrible advice. They're basically telling Alan to live in denial. But Alan's problem is he's lost faith in the world and therefore his future, so asks, how is that supposed to make him feel better? So Gumball and Darwin change tactic with the rest of the song, telling him to accept the bad but focus on the good, and that the earth still needs his hope to fix it when it breaks. The song seems to work and Alan reflates himself, and colour returns to the town. Alan is the sort of character who believes the world is what you make it. Alan wants the world to be perfect, so he does a lot of volunteer work to try to achieve that. But he's lost faith in the world, primarily also in himself, because no matter how hard he tries to be friends with Gumball, Gumball never reciprocates. The thing about friendship is that they happen organically. You can't force someone to be friends with you. You can't force someone to like you. Nor should you manipulate situations to work in your favour if that is your end goal. It makes you come off as inauthentic and needy. It's impossible for everyone to like you and for you to like everyone, no matter how hard you try. That's just not how life works, and we have to accept that the world isn't black and white. It really is one big shade of grey. You have to take the good with the bad. But going with this logic, accepting you can't change the world no matter how hard you try, then what really is the point? If this episode was touching on this, it did so in a subtle and comedic way, which in my opinion was brilliant. The episode could have easily have been made about Alan and Gumball's friendship, but instead they focus more on Alan's inner turmoil, which is a far more relatable situation and far more interesting topic. To me, the episode is trying to communicate that it's not about changing how people see you or trying to force someone to like you, but instead it is about the bigger picture. You can't change the world, but changing how you see the world, focusing on the good things and the people in your life that matter, and doing that can result in the world changing without you instigating the change. It's a domino effect. Doing things to make the world better are important, but if we don't see any results from all that hard work, we do get disheartened and wonder what the point is. I feel that it's more important to focus on the little things that matter in life and know that big problems are out of our control. We shouldn't live in denial and ignore the bad, but we can make small changes in our own lives, and in the long run, that will make the world as we know it better. Overall, this episode was not an easy one to review because it touched on some themes that are pretty difficult to write about. It's a good episode because it did what it set out to do and still had the comedy it is known for threaded throughout it. But I do question Gumball and Darwin's motivation behind helping Alan in the first place. It did seem a little self-serving at first, but maybe I'm just reading too much into this again. I guess we all need to have faith in something, whether we are religious or not. Faith is an integral part of everyday life, and though it's important to not be in denial about the bad things in life, it's important to not let those things become your focus. I think that is what this episode was trying to communicate. I'm Mad Munchkin, stay creative.